And during the fight, Golnova despairs and sends Marlefus quickly heals his wounds, but she informs him that his strength is already running out. At this, Golnova turns to the newcomer in the group and asks him to try to attack using fire magic, but the boy says that he knows how to do it and tells him to turn around. And meanwhile, Bandana stands from afar watching the two fighting and notices that the group is already in ruins. And getting back to Kurt, he finds out that he will be the director of a royal laboratory for researching magical technology, and then he asks why something of this caliber has fallen into his lap. At this, Eurytia informs him that the person responsible for analyzing his magic crystals works as a royal court magician as a hobby, and because she has this important position, she decided to do it for him. But upon hearing something so surprising, Kurt asks if this girl isn't lying. However, Eurytia makes it clear that she is in fact important as she says she is. But even after hearing this, Kurt refuses the offer because he can't imagine himself working in a role that puts him above other people. After all, he still feels bad about his poor performance in the Flaming Dragon Fangs group. And what's more, Kurt reminds her that his current job is there. Having said that, he asks if the money she got from the crystals was enough for her to pay her taxes, and Eurytia says yes. However, she only took a small amount of the gold she received for the magic crystals. After all, he was the one who created them, so Eurytia informs him that she deposited the rest of the gold in his account. But upon hearing this, Kurt says that she didn't need to go to the trouble of doing all that for him. However, she stands against what he says and makes it clear that she would never accept taking such a large amount of gold to do such a trivial job. Hearing her talking as if she were dealing with a large amount of money, Kurt is confused, and Eurytia in turn decides to change the subject, asking if he would like to continue mining. At this point, Kurt gets excited again and tells her that he found a place in the forest that seems to hold good minerals. And when she sees him willing to continue the work even without having slept at all, Eurytia questions him about it. But Kurt says that he has already slept 6 hours, which for him is already enough rest time to continue the day. And as soon as she hears this, Eurytia becomes even more worried because the boy has barely slept well. And as for him, Kurt remembers that he used to sleep only for hours when he was in the group Fangs of the Flaming Dragon, and then he feels guilty and promises that he will make up for the extra sleep he got. And well, when they go to the place Kurt told them, he decides to leave her to dig the area alone. And as for him, Kurt returns to the place where they found those diamonds the other day and leaves that fertile area for Eurytia to explore alone. And as the afternoon falls, after digging a giant hole in the area, Eurytia finds a giant piece of topaz and deduces that she can make about 3 gold coins with that ore if she asks Kurt to turn it into magic crystals for free. But soon after having this somewhat opportunistic thought, Eurytia realizes that she will be exploiting the boy too much by making so many requests of him. Well, and when she goes to Kurt to see the result of her mining, she gets an even bigger fright as she discovers that it is filled with a giant box with mithril. And upon noticing her astonished face, Kurt says that this ore is very easy to find in his old village, and that is why the village always threw these ores away when they found them, since they do not have much value there. And as for Eurytia, she says that mithril is actually a much more valuable ore than gold or platinum itself. Therefore, she is amazed to see that there is a place in the world where there is so much of this mineral that they throw it away, considering that mithril is very difficult to find throughout the world. And as she puts these details together in her head, Eurytia asks what the ore she's after would be other than mithril, and Kurt says that she's actually after orichalcum, the legendary ore known as the metal of the gods. And upon seeing one of these miners in his hand, Eurytia becomes confused, as she didn't even know that such an ore existed in that mountain. But upon hearing this, Kurt says that it's possible to extract it anywhere. However, Eurytia opposes what he says, as she believes that it's impossible to find orichalcum so easily. In this, Kurt explains that by digging 7 kilometers into the ground, it becomes increasingly easier to find this mineral. And upon hearing this, Eurytia remembers that they have only been there for half a day, so she is surprised to see that he managed to dig 7 kilometers in such a short time and still managed to return to the surface. But soon after, she remembers that she is talking about Kurt, and for him almost nothing is impossible. She asks about the 7 kilometers hole he dug, but Kurt says he has already filled it in, all in the space of just 8 hours. Suddenly, the sun begins to shine from a different direction. Eurytia looks to the side and notices that he has gone through the mountain, creating a tunnel that connects Samaela to the city of Tikhon. Well, upon returning from mining, Kurt meets Bandana, who informs him that she is no longer part of the Flaming Dragon Fangs. She remembers when Golnova left a restaurant and broke everything, causing a huge commotion because she didn't like the food. And when he missed Kurt's food, he asked Bandana to bring the boy back even if it was by force. In this, Bandana takes the teleportation stone from Golnova, saying that she will need to use it. However, she no longer intends to return to the group, especially after seeing Golnova being cornered by the guards who will possibly arrest him for the confusion he caused in the restaurant. And upon hearing that Bandana was also fired, Kurt realizes that there will be no chance of him returning to the group one day. But upon hearing this, Bandana asks why he cares so much about that group. At this, Kurt reminds her that he is very grateful to Golnova for having welcomed him into the group. Upon hearing this, Bandana remembers that a friend who has a studio is in need of employees, so she suggests that Kurt help her with that. And even though he doesn't think he's that useful, Kurt decides to go to the place. And as for Bandana, she stands back with a mischievous smile on her face and says that being an apprentice to the great wise woman will not be an easy task for him. She then explains that the ateliers are facilities that mainly produce and sell medicines, magic swords, magical devices, among other things. And as for the head of an atelier, he is known as an atelier meister and therefore receives special authority regarding the development and distribution of items. In addition, these ateliers are also respected and treated as viscounts due to their enormous importance to the nation. And well, going back to Kurt, he walks towards the atelier excitedly. After all, he didn't know that there was an atelier meister in that city. And as soon as he arrives at the place, looking at the map, he wonders if he has come to the right place, because it appears to be just an ordinary person's house. Kurt then looks at a sign next to it and sees the name Ophelia's atelier, which confirms that he is in the right place. And as soon as he rings the doorbell, Kurt is greeted by a very young girl who makes him question if she is really the Meister atelier. And as for her, the girl deduces that he just without Kurt is not familiar with elves. However, he says that he is actually wondering if the atelier meister is really her. At this, the girl introduces herself as Michelle Lalakota and explains her position there better, saying that she is actually just the atelier meister's assistant. Upon hearing this, Kurt informs her that he is there on recommendation to help the atelier. At this, Michelle is excited to discover that they will finally have help with the chores, and then she pulls him into the house. And as soon as he smells the house, Kurt immediately covers his nose, at which point Michelle apologizes to him and says that they will need to start by giving the office a general clean. And upon seeing that, Kurt immediately understands that the help they want is with the household chores and not with the studio. After all, the place really is completely compromised. And as for Michelle, she apologizes for leaving the house in that state and says that she is not very good at cleaning. Well, after being left alone with that huge mess, Kurt starts cleaning and finishes the day's work in just 30 minutes. Having done that, he wonders what new task he should do, and so he goes to a room that he thinks is Michelle's, and upon hearing a voice authorizing him to enter, Kurt opens the door and comes face to face with another girl who was changing at the time. Then she asks who he is, and Kurt introduces himself and says that he started working there. Then the girl says that Atelier Ophelia went to the basement. Then Kurt starts looking at the symbol on the girl's belly and soon realizes that it is a curse. He then asks to touch her, and when he does so, Kurt realizes that the girl does not feel pain when being touched directly on the symbol on her belly. From this, he deduces that she has already gotten used to the pain of trying to feel it. And suddenly, in the middle of the interaction, her stomach growls, and so Kurt decides to get her something to eat. And in the meantime, Eurytia takes the mithril to Mimiko to evaluate and discovers that all that ore is equivalent to 50,000 gold. And upon hearing this, Eurytia begins to worry about Kurt's safety, because if they discover his ability to locate precious ores, he could suffer something serious. At this, Mimiko informs her that at best, he will only be kidnapped, but he could probably even be killed. Having said that, Mimiko wonders how a boy of his caliber managed to remain hidden for so long, at which point Eurytia says that she heard about his dismissal from the Flaming Dragon Fangs group. Upon hearing this, Mimiko remembers that the leader of this group is now a wanted man. And continuing with the conversation, Mimiko asks what she intends with Kurt now, at which point Eurytia says that she wants to make him an atelier meister. After all, limiting his actions will be safer than letting him go around standing out so much. However, Eurytia still doesn't know how to convince him to follow this path. And well, going back to Kurt, he finally meets Ophelia, who upon discovering his encounter with the cursed girl, asks him not to talk about her to anyone. And when he goes to Lisa's room, Ophelia serves Kurt's food to her, but as soon as the girl takes the first spoonful, she falls to the floor. At this, Ophelia deduces that the food was poisoned by Kurt, and then tries to look for an antidote immediately. But before she can leave the place, Lisa interrupts her, standing up right away, and says that she is finally cured. At this, Ophelia looks at the girl's belly and notices that the symbol of the curse has in fact disappeared. And in the meantime, a mysterious man goes to his superior to lament that the curse has been undone, at which point the man in front of the servant complains, saying that Lisa needs to be killed urgently. And returning to Ophelia, she goes with Lisa to Eurytia and Mimiko, who upon seeing the girl, recognize Lisa as the third princess, and are left without understanding why an important person is there. In this, Lisa says that she intends to find out who was the person behind the curse, and she says that she was only saved thanks to a boy named Kurt. Upon hearing this, Eurytia and Mimiko are immediately amazed at yet another great feat by the boy who has no idea what he is doing. And upon hearing that the porridge Kurt made was able to destroy the curse cast on the princess, Eurytia is astonished by this and wonders if the boy has been up to any other feats since they separated. As for the culprit who poisoned the princess, Mimiko deduces that he is a curse user with important connections, which in turn allows him to tamper with the curse protections in the royal palace. And taking these points into consideration, Mimiko arrives at 3 suspects, one of them being Sonova Riskets, who in this case is the first general of the Royal Expeditionary Forces. The second suspect falls on Tristan Manuel, the bishop of the Polish Church. And finally, the third suspect is called Isadora Arkmama, the third queen of Her Royal Majesty. Having said all this, Ophelia informs everyone that Tristan could have used his followers to tamper with the protections on Lisa's room. In addition, the princess reminds them that Tristan has free access to the royal palace, so she is one of the possible people to have cursed her. However, Lisa wonders if Sonova would also have this access. In this, Eurytia informs her that Sonova also has connections with the Thieves Guild, who in this case are experts in gathering information, so they may also have some of their people inside the royal palace. And since they have many suspects, Ophelia says that they will have difficulty in determining the culprit exactly, at least for now. That said, she suggests setting a trap to find the real culprit. And then Ophelia reminds everyone that Lisa has already turned 15, which makes her an adult in that kingdom. And by custom of the kingdom, it is expected that she leaves the palace to train for a year. So Ophelia suggests that they create a fictitious atelier with a facade atelier meister and let Lisa train there for that 1 year. By doing this, Ophelia believes that the culprit will certainly try to gather information about the atelier meister there. And as the person tries to find out things about the atelier meister, they will take advantage of every step the suspect takes to learn more about him. But before putting the plan into practice, Ophelia says that they will need to prepare some achievement so that the fictional atelier meister can be recognized as such. At this, Eurytia leaves a magic crystal on display in her hand and says that it is more than enough to make anyone believe that they have a legitimate atelier meister. And when checking the crystal, Ophelia is amazed by the quality of the product and asks where she got a crystal like that. At this, Eurytia leaves the girls even more amazed by revealing that Kurt is behind the creation of this crystal. And in the meantime, Kurt goes to the elves' atelier but sees the door closed. At this, Michelle goes to him and says that after her master saw Kurt the day before, she simply left for a place, but did not say where she was going. And when he leaves the place, Kurt finds himself without any new tasks to do and wonders if he did something wrong. But when he hears his stomach growling, Kurt decides to leave that matter aside for now and just go buy something to eat. And already at the restaurant, he hears a group of adventurers arguing because their porter is injured and cannot participate in the missions temporarily. At this, the girl in the group suggests that they do the work just the 3 of them. However, another member of the group reminds her that they will be defenseless against enemy attacks while they are carrying the load. But upon hearing this, the girl remains firm in her idea and says that they do not have time to look for a new porter for now. And upon hearing this, Kurt decides to approach the group and offer his help and says that even though he is very bad at combat, he is at least excellent as a carrier. But as soon as she sees him, the girl begins to disdain Kurt for being just a child. However, the other member of the group scolds her, saying that they are both the same age. At this, the girl's brother apologizes to Kurt for her rudeness, but says that the job of a porter is not easy at all, and in their case, the situation is worse, as they will need to carry iron golems that weigh more than 200 kilograms, so it is necessary to have specialized skills to carry them. Having said that, they dismiss him and suggest that Kurt try working with another group of adventurers. However, upon hearing that the load weighs only 200 kilograms, Kurt says that he can carry the equipment easily, and to prove that he is telling the truth, Kurt lifts the 2 men in the group, who in addition to their natural weight, are also wearing very heavy armor. Therefore, they weigh more than 200 kilograms. And upon seeing that the boy is truly an excellent carrier, the group decides to go on the mission alongside Kurt. And on the way, one of the members of the group, Sakura, introduces himself as Kant, a heavy warrior, and although he has a sword, Kant says that it is more for decoration. After all, his specialty is laying hands on his opponents. And as for the other member of the group, he introduces himself as Dando, a samurai and leader of the group. And finally, the girl introduces herself as Sina, a ranger. Well, as they walk a little further, Kurt ends up needing Sina's help to get rid of a slime. And unlike what he thought, Kurt receives the support of the group instead of their anger. In this, he sees the difference between this group and his old group, where any mistake of his was a reason for fights and humiliation. In this, Kurt starts to cry with emotion, making Sina believe that he was injured in the fight against the slime. And continuing on through a cave, Kurt and the others come across a goblin, but Danzo finishes the enemy with just 1 attack. However, soon after they hear the desperate screams of other goblins, which seem to echo from all sides, suggesting that the goblins have a larger horde than they imagined. At this, Kans notices that the entrance also seems to be full of goblins, and then Sina asks what they should do, and Danzo coldly responds that they should prepare for the difficult fight that is to come. Upon hearing this, Sina already begins to despair. After all, they will not have the slightest chance against all these goblins. As for Kurt, he finds a secret passage in one of the walls and enters the place in a hurry. At this, Sina does the same, however. She closes the door with Danzo and Kans outside. At this, Kans explains to Kurt that looking for a way out while facing goblins is not an easy task, so he sends Kurt ahead while they stay behind to fight. But upon hearing this, Kurt refuses to escape and leaves them to fight alone, and instead he asks to fight alongside them. But upon hearing this, Sina reminds him that he is not even capable of defeating a slime, so he would only get in the way during the fight against the goblins. And upon hearing the argument, Kans tells the two to stop fighting. As for Danzo, he asks if Kans regrets sacrificing himself to save Sina. In this, Kans makes it clear that he would always do so, because dying to protect his sister is the greatest honor an older brother can have. Upon hearing this, Danzo understands him. After all, having a death that does not shame him is the greatest pride of a warrior, and furthermore, Kans reminds him that there are no regrets when one is fighting to ensure the survival of one's friends. And upon hearing Kans treating him like a friend, Kurt becomes emotional, but at the same time sad, as he can do nothing to help them. At this, Sina reassures him, saying that his brother and Danzo will survive the goblins, saying that she lights up the place and calls Kurt to go ahead. But as soon as she takes a few more steps towards the exit, Sina is surprised by an iron dragon golem and falls to the ground without reacting. And meanwhile, Eurytia and Lisa go to the inn where Kurt should be, but when they arrive at his room and do not find him, they don't understand anything until suddenly Bandana outside says that Kurt walks to the caves to the east-northeast of there, with a group of adventurers named Sakura. Upon hearing this voice, Eurytia and Lisa go outside to see who would be behind this. However, they find no one else. Eurytia analyzes the information provided and deduces that it could be a trap to make them go to the caves that are possibly full of goblins. But regardless of the veracity of the information, Eurytia decides to go check if Kurt is there. Upon hearing this, Lisa asks to go with her. However, at first Eurytia refuses to take her to such a dangerous place, but Lisa reminds her that she is guarding her, so the two cannot be separated. And besides, Lisa assures her that she has already learned enough magic to be able to defend herself. Upon hearing this, Eurytia decides to take her, but asks Lisa to promise never to leave her. And once there, the two find Danzo and Kans facing a horde of goblins and go into battle with them. And meanwhile, Sina continues to be shocked by the Iron Dragon Golem and apologizes to Kurt for having dragged him into that dangerous job with his team. Furthermore, Sina feels guilty that Kans and Danzo risk their lives to buy them time, because in the end, they won't be able to do anything to get out of that cave alive. But seeing her so scared, Kurt reassures her, saying that he will take care of the dragons so that they can escape. With that, Kurt finishes off all the dragons in a fraction of seconds, leaving Sina completely shocked by what she sees. However, Kurt informs her that he has already used mining iron golems. And suddenly, Eurytia and Lisa enter the room and wonder what is happening there, in which Sina informs that Kurt finished off the golem dragons with a single blow and even called it mining. And well, when following Kurt, Eurytia reassures him about Danzo and Kans, saying that the two are alive, and although they are injured, their lives are no longer at risk. As they head to the other members of the team, Eurytia hears Danzo and Kans thanking her, who acknowledge the great help she has given them. However, Eurytia says that she has done nothing wrong, and instead of discussing it, she focuses on the atelier they are about to create, and says that she will work there as the direct head adventurer, so she asks Kurt to work alongside her. And although the offer is good, Kurt feels bad about accepting it, since he is working with the Sakura group at the moment. However, Kans suggests that he accept the offer, and says that he should not worry about the Sakura group. As for Eurytia, she says that the place will need adventurer labor, since it is just opening, so she asks the Sakura group to work at the atelier as well. The next day, Mimiko is summoned to test Kurt's skills, and in the end, she attests that he has an SSS rank in all areas. However, she deceives him, saying that he is only a standard B rank. But in the end, Mimiko reveals to Eurytia that the boy has a latent magical power much greater than hers, and precisely for this reason, Mimiko says that he was lucky to have been correctly evaluated by her. After all, if it were discovered that he is an SSS rank, Kurt could have serious problems. And as for the local receptionist, she ends up hearing the entire conversation, but covers her ears, pretending that she heard nothing. And during the trip, Kurt is amazed at the speed off the transport. And as for Eurytia, she comments a little more about the border town where they are going, and says that the place used to be a military base on the border of the land of demons. And continuing with the explanation, Lisa says that this city continues to receive aid from the Alliance even though it does not have a viceroy appointed. And in the meantime, Kans changes the subject to ask more about the atelier master they are going to visit, and Eurytia, somewhat embarrassed, just says that the guy is a very honorable atelier meister. And well, as he approaches the walls of that city, Kurt remembers remembers that he once worked on repairing the walls, and remembering that he was fired after 3 days of work is something that makes him a little down. But when he sees that the walls haven't been finished since he left, Kurt deduces that they are repairing the walls in a different way. And well, when they arrive at the empty space where their studio will be, everyone is amazed at the size of the place. After all, it looks more like an abandoned lot than anything else. Wow. Kans asks what they should do, and Eurytia says that they will need to wait at the inn until the studio is finally finished. With that said, she turns to Kurt and asks if he is capable of building the studio alone. And upon hearing this question, everyone around is scared at the mere possibility of the boy doing all this alone. And as for Kurt, he also says that it will be impossible to do that work in just 1 day. In fact, he can do the entire job in 3 days. So Eurytia lets him build the studio in whatever time he wants, even if it ends up taking longer than the 3 days planned, and she is also willing to provide more materials if he needs them. So, Kurt writes down the most important items on a piece of paper and gives them to her. And after receiving Kurt's request for materials, Eurytia calls everyone to the inn, because now they need to let Kurt work more comfortably on the project. And at another time, Eurytia meets with all the adventurers. In this, Sina reveals to them that those iron dragon golems were defeated by Kurt alone, as he had said that he was used to mining this type of monster. Having said all this, Sin asks who exactly this boy is. In this, Eurytia decides to start talking about herself and Lisa first. In this case, Eurytia says that she was an adventurer who used to serve directly to the royal family, and as for Lisa, she introduces herself as the third princess of that kingdom. And upon hearing this, Kans immediately stands up with a look of astonishment on his face. And as for Lisa, she informs him that she is hiding her true identity at the moment. Therefore, she tells everyone to address her only as Lisa, so as not to raise any suspicion. And upon hearing all this, Sina asks if Kurt is also royalty, seeing as he is very skilled. To this, Eurytia says that in fact, he is not royalty, as they do not even know who he is. The only thing they know is that his combat skills are all G rank. However, all the skills that are not related to combat are SSS rank. And although he is a rarity, Eurytia says that Kurt has no idea of all this power he possesses. After all, they hid all of this from him, and said that at best, Kurt is only a C or B rank. Having said all this, Eurytia reveals that the new Atelier Meister there is Kurt himself, but this will also remain a secret from him. And upon hearing this, Sina asks why they are deceiving him. After all, they could simply tell Kurt the truth. However, Eurytia says that even if he learned the truth, Kurt probably wouldn't believe a word they said. And besides, they would have no way of knowing what kind of bad people might try to exploit Kurt's powers if it became public. And upon hearing this, Sina becomes even more irritated, as she deduces that Eurytia is trying to protect Kurt so that she can exploit him. At this point, Kans enters the middle of the discussion to try to control his sister. However, Sina says that she does not need to hear anything else they have to say. After all, Sina already understands everything that is happening there. At which point, Kans hugs the girl, intending to make her calm down a little more. And then, Lisa continues with what Eurytia was saying, and says that Kurt managed to break the curse cast on her by making just some homemade porridge. In this, Eurytia informs everyone that there is a person after Lisa, and because of that, they needed to take shelter in that border city to build the new studio, so that the suspect of being after Lisa will identify himself sooner or later. As for Kurt, Eurytia says that the fact that he is a very pure boy makes her want to protect him in the face of all this chaos they are facing. Having said that, Lisa asks everyone to keep Kurt's secret, so that they can protect him together. At this, Danzo immediately agrees to follow the princess's orders. After all, adventurers have a duty to follow the orders of royalty. And besides, Danzo also says he is willing to support Kurt, even if he has to deceive him to do so. After all, they are already friends. And upon hearing this, Khan says the same, because he doesn't need any special reason to support his friends and companions. And as for Sina, she still shows that she is not willing to go through with that plan. After all, they have only known Kurt for a few days, and therefore, she doesn't think they should swear so much loyalty to the boy right away. Upon hearing this, Eurytia says she understands her. After all, she has only known Kurt for 6 days. At this point, Sina changes her mind and asks for some time to think about it. Upon noticing her sister's somewhat suspicious actions, Kans goes to Eurytia and reassures her, saying that Sina will soon be okay with the situation and will support them. Meanwhile, Sina walks through the streets, suffering from everything she has just heard, and believes that Kurt should also be aware of everything that is happening. Then she goes to the boy to talk, and is surprised to see that Kurt has already built a good part of the studio. And as soon as he sees her there, Kurt goes to the girl and says that he hasn't finished the studio yet. As for her, Sina is surprised that he excavated all that in such a short time. Then Kurt explains that he has a B rank in mining, when in fact, he is an SSS rank, but he believes that the B rank is enough to make him so agile. And when she hears this, Cena dies inside and thinks out loud, saying that a B rank would never be able to perform that well in mining. And even though Kurt leaves her impressed, he believes that it is not as surprising as people think, because he thinks he should be even faster. And well, Cena decides to bring up a more frank subject with him and asks if he is not upset about having all that work pushed onto him. And Kurt, in turn, says he is not feeling pressured. After all, he wants to make up for the fact that he was useless in his old group. And in the meantime, Danzo meets with Bandana, who informs him that there is a group called Mill Faces that is trying to end the Sakura group at the behest of another anonymous group, who in turn is wanting the head from the Sakura for taking a job that belonged to them. And because of this silly resentment, they want to end the Sakura group. Well, after hearing all the details passed on by Bandana, Danzo goes to a bar where he meets Bibanak, one of the members of the Thousand Faces group. And as soon as he is discovered, the guy starts running to escape from Danzo, but in the end, he is caught. And then, Danzo just tells the guy to stay away from his friends, but leaves him alive. As for Bandana, she stays hidden watching Danzo's action, and says that he should have finished off the target before he became a problem in the future. And suddenly, Bandana notices the presence of Marlefis in the place, and since she was advised to stay away from this person, she decides to leave for Kurt's hometown. And well, 3 days later, everyone goes to the studio, and is surprised to see the luxurious place that Kurt managed to build in such a short time. As for the boy, he takes everyone to see the inside of the mansion, and in the end, he asks Euricia when the Atelier Meister will arrive, to which she changes the subject and says that he is apparently very late, and that is why his arrival will be delayed. And well, after finding out that Kurt would sleep in a not at all noble area of the mansion, everyone starts asking Kurt to sleep in one of the rooms. However, they need to spend 2 hours convincing him to do so, and they ask him to stay in that room only until the Atelier Meister arrives. He then agrees to sleep in the room as a caretaker, but makes it clear that he will leave as soon as the Atelier Meister arrives. As for Euricia, she asks if he would be able to place a curse barrier around the mansion. Upon hearing this request, Kurt says that it is a bit difficult to fulfill, and Euricia notes that she will need to use the anti-curse talisman she received from Mimiko. And as she spreads the talismans around the house, she arrives at Lisa's room, which in this case is the most important room to be protected. But suddenly, Lisa comes out of the room shouting Kurt's name and saying that she was waiting for him. And upon hearing this, Euricia asks what exactly she was waiting for, and Lisa says that she was ready to take the boy to her bed. And when she notices her saying all these obscenities, Euricia gets shocked and starts talking loudly, at which point Lisa asks her to control herself a little to avoid waking up other people. And during the conversation, Lisa teases Euricia, deducing that she is jealous at the thought that Kurt might be going to her room. However, Euricia just says that she should treat Kurt like the pure and innocent boy that he is. And well, the next day, Lisa goes to Kurt with some lighter clothes, which leaves Euricia in shock again, and then she asks the princess to stop wearing such shameless clothes. And as for Kurt, he says that he also found the clothes strange at first, but ended up overlooked it after Lisa said that these are his casual clothes. And after everyone sits down to eat, Euricia notices Kurt missing, and then goes after him, and discovers that the boy was erasing the symbols of the anti-curse talismans that she had placed on the walls, as he believes that those things are just some strange scribbles. And when calling Marlefis to talk, the Nispa Tristan decides to excommunicate her, claiming that the group she belonged to, the Fangs of the Flaming Grail, in addition to demonstrating violence towards people, has as its leader a wanted man. But upon hearing this, Marlefis decides to divert the focus from her, saying that she never participated in such practices of her group. And although she did indeed attack a restaurant in the royal capital with her lightning magic, Marlefis justifies it, saying that the food they served was worse than pig swill. And upon hearing all these excuses, Tristan tells her to be quiet and says that the bad reputation she has earned for herself will also be a stain on the reputation of the Poland Church. But even reprimanding her in this way, Tristan recognizes that she has great ability with magic, so he suggests that she do a certain service for the church, and in exchange for that, she will be forgiven of her most trivial sins and will receive the position of priestess. Having said that, the bishop offers her a glass of wine, making Marlefis believe that everything will be fine, and then she asks what mission she will have to do. At that, Tristan's expression changes completely, and he asks Marlefis to help him assassinate the third princess, Lisa. And right after Marlefis drinks the glass of wine, she is informed by Tristan that the wine she just drank is actually poisoned with a curse, which makes her body reject anything she tries to ingest besides water. Therefore, Tristan makes it clear that she will die within a month if she continues to have that curse on her body, and in order to have the curse removed, she will need to fulfill the mission that was given to her. And well, in the meantime, Euricia analyzes Lisa and notices that she has not had any significant changes in her body since Kurt removed the curse from her, which suggests that the enemy probably has not yet managed to do anything against Lisa again. But after thinking about it a little, Euricia deduces that Kurt's food may have neutralized the possible new curses that the enemy tried to apply to Lisa. And regardless of what is happening, Euricia makes it clear that Mimiko has already established his webs in the city, so if the enemy makes any move, they will certainly be informed. And in the meantime, Lisa remains calm about the danger and discusses with Kurt about the rice cakes he makes, asking him to make them for her again in case she is cursed by the enemy. And upon hearing this, Kurt thanks her for complimenting his cooking, but reassures her about future curses. At this, Eurytia asks why he is so sure. After all, Kurt himself had said that it would be very difficult to create a barrier against curses. At this, Kurt reaffirms what Eurytia tells him and confesses that he is really not capable of creating barriers against curses. However, the entire mansion he built already serves as a barrier that reflects curses, therefore, he cannot create another barrier inside it, because he would not even need to do so. And while they talk, one of the men sent to curse Lisa tries to hit her with his curse, but his magic is instantly repelled. And in addition, the guy starts to glow out of nowhere as a side effect of his attack. And meanwhile, General Allraid stands on top of the castle when suddenly, Generic goes next to him and deduces that something is wrong due to the fact that the fog in the castle is denser than normal. And upon hearing this, Allraid confesses that he is also feeling a bad feeling. And as for Generic, he comments on the wall repair work that Allraid took part in and says that he did not expect to see him taking care of such matters. However, Allraid says that considering the importance of Thatchety, he practically had no choice. After all, they were afraid of enemy spies entering the place for work. And upon hearing this, Generic reassures him. After all, he did not detect any ill-intentioned person in the city. And well, returning to Eurytia and the other girls, they follow the magician who tried to curse Lisa, guided by the light that the enemy reflects. And arriving at the place, they come face to face with the enemy already dead. And then, they deduce that the guy's own partners killed him and fled, precisely so as not to be identified later. And when seeing that the wizard continues to shine even after death, Eurytia is impressed because she did not imagine that Kurt could create such a powerful curse reflector. And returning to the castle, Generic and Allraid receive confirmation of the bad feeling they had earlier. In this case, they begin to be attacked by a gigantic horde of skeletons. Meanwhile, Mimimi and the other girls hide around the place, and Eurytia deduces that the skeletons are just after Lisa, since they are heading towards that city. As for Allraid, he decides to start the attacks with the help of the first platoon and asks Generic to take care of the evacuation of all the citizens. But upon hearing this, Generic asks to fight alongside them and explains that the skeletons can only walk in a straight line, so Generic says that they will be able to defeat the enemies if they all fight together. However, Allraid reminds him of the possibility of another type of enemy and then orders him to go and protect the people. And suddenly, the skeletons begin to disappear as they try to cross the walls from the west. And upon seeing this happening, Eurytia remembers that the west wall was built entirely by Kurt, and so she gets that in her head. And as for General Allraid, he also remembers this and deduces that Kurt is behind it. As for Marlefis, she is pressured by a demon to keep going by sending new waves of enemies. After all, the first one ended up failing. That said, the demon suggests using her magical power to summon the second and third waves simultaneously. Upon hearing this, Marlefis wonders how they will do something like that, to which the demon informs her that in fact, Bishop Tristan forged a pact with the higher demon and put him at her service. But when he sees that she doesn't have that much magical energy, the demon is slightly disappointed, but says that she can still use her soul as fuel, as that will be enough to make up for the difference that will be missing. Upon hearing this, Marlefis finally understands what is happening. In this case, she was deceived by the church, and all this time, Tristan was already planning to use her as a sacrifice to kill Princess Lisa. Meanwhile, Eurytia informs Kurt about the situation in the city, which is surrounded by monsters, and to make matters worse, they are unable to call for help, as the flying monsters are preventing reinforcements from arriving. At this, Lisa says she is worried about the Sakura group, since they have not yet returned from hunting trolls. As for Eurytia, she remembers that the monsters are coming directly from the Lapita ruins to the west, and so the knights have already begun to devise a strategy to stop the enemy attack. But they need to take every action with the utmost caution due to the number of monsters. And upon hearing about the monsters, Lisa says that she heard about the skeleton attack that occurred last night. At this, Eurytia confirms this rumor, but says that the skeletons disappeared the moment they touched the wall, almost as if they were being purified. And noticing that she was surprised by this, Kurt says that in fact, this is a common occurrence in their village. And suddenly, in the middle of the conversation, Eurytia has the idea of cleaning the ruins to the west and asks Lisa and Kurt to stay there while she does the job. Upon hearing this, Kurt initially refuses to stand by and asks to go with her. However, he remembers that he is terrible at combat, and so he decides to stay in the mansion to protect Lisa from any evil that may torment her. And upon heading to the knight's strategy room, Eurytia is received by General Allraid, who is surprised to see her after so long. And when he notices two more girls with her, Allraid asks who they are. At this, Eurytia introduces herself to them as the third magician of the royal court, and Ophelia as an atelier meister. And as soon as they hear about Ophelia's position, Allraid and Generic recognize her immediately. After all, she was the person responsible for training the third princess, Lisa. And speaking of the princess, Eurytia reveals that she is in that city, at which point Allraid begins to move to send soldiers to serve the princess. But seeing him so agitated, Mimiko reassures him, saying that his intelligence squad is already taking care of the princess's safety. And after this brief introductory dialogue, Eurytia gets straight to the point and asks him and his men to serve as bait to draw the monster's attention, because in the meantime, she will go to the ruins in the west to cut off the source of these monsters. But upon hearing this, Allraid says that she won't be able to handle such a task alone. However, Mimiko asks him to stay calm. After all, they have a secret weapon that will help them during the mission. But when looking at her hand, Allraid only sees a simple magic crystal and doesn't understand where they want to go with it. At this, Ophelia assures that the equipment will be effective, and with that, she manages to convince Allraid to give this vote of confidence in them. However, he asks to go on the mission with them and says that Generic will be responsible for leading the decoy squad in his place. And although Generic doesn't buy this strategy right away, in the end, he decides to follow Allraid's plan. And while they drink a cup of water before saying goodbye, Generic is filled with confidence and says that this will be the see you later cup. After all, he guarantees that they will both be alive at the end of the mission. And well, when they reach the first wave of skeletons, Eurytia takes one of the magic crystals from her bag and throws it towards the enemies, causing a strong flash in the area. But as soon as the flash fades, the skeletons disappear along with the light. Meanwhile, Kurt decides to forge a sword, but at the end of the process, he is disappointed with the result. And then, Lisa goes to him to invite him to dinner, and when she sees him wielding a sword out of nowhere, she asks if he was the one who made it. To this, Kurt says yes, and leaves the sword for Lisa, since he doesn't see it as a very useful piece of equipment for him. And when he notices her smiling with that not very interesting gift, Kurt deduces that she is smiling just to please him, and then he wonders if he should continue pretending not to know her true feelings. And after thinking a little more, he decides to come clean and asks if someone is trying to kill her. At this, Lisa confirms that there is, and changes her expression immediately, because she feels that she is causing problems for Eurytia. After all, she is fighting only to protect Lisa from this person who is attempting to take her life. And as for Kurt, he remembers the times he saw people scribbling on the walls of the city walls, and notices that the ruins are the perfect places for this type of person. So he deduces that Eurytia is going to the ruins to clean up the mess of some annoying scribbler, who in his mind, Kurt calls Rabisky. And then he starts to lament that he doesn't have enough combat power to be helping Eurytia. And upon hearing this, Lisa says she feels the same way as him, as she would also like to catch her stalker personally. At this, Kurt notices that she is feeling the same way as him, and then suggests that they go out alone to help Eurytia clear the western ruins. Did I have absolute team sure he just doesn't know how to fight because he didn't try? You saw what he did with that dragon, and if he looks at a real dragon and thinks it's sashimi, I'm sure he makes sushi out of everything that's part of that dragon. So leave a like and subscribe because there are still many episodes to come. I'm sure he'll get more and more overpowered. See you in the next video.